Using both guides on the wedge sled here, you really do need to mark two edges of your wood. That way when you actually put the pieces back together, that way you know which way to alternate them around. It's also the first time I've used the wedgie sled properly. Don't have a little drop off guide next to the saw blade, so just got to be very careful for when all the bits come off. Once all the pieces are cut, it's just a case of first of all matching them up as to which side they've been cut. That way you can tell, because you've got a line on the top and the other line is either on the front or the back, and just then roughly assemble them so that they're opposites as they go around. Once you've got all the pieces cut, you can see here I've got 5 segmented rings cut. It's just a case of going through them all, sanding them all, just a light sanding just to take all the fluffy bits off the edges. Once they're all sanded up, it's the long process of gluing them all up. Just an ordinary wood PVA glue, a bit on each side, and then just slowly go all the way around the whole segment. Always worthwhile doing a dry run on this before you glue up, just to check that they all do compress together properly. And once you have glued them up like that, it's just a case, first of all, screw up the Jubilee clip fairly lightly, because what you will find is that the segments will all rise or drop a bit, so that way you can then just push them back into place before you finally tighten them up. As you can see here, this is one that didn't actually match up, so you glue it up in 2 halves, and I've just got a little wedge there just to separate it out a little bit. Once they've been left at least overnight, if not ideally 24 hours, you can just undo the Jubilee clips. They aren't too much work to pull apart. Then it's just a sanding down. I used to just do these by hand on a large piece of sandpaper across a really flat surface, which was fine when they were pine because they used to sand down fairly quickly, but these being hardwoods, it's a lot quicker on the actual lathe with the sanding disc. Just clean up the sanding disc at the end, at least that way it extends the life of the sandpaper. Now using an oak board, just cutting a couple of square pieces off. These will become the very bottom of the box and what will be the bottom of the lid. Just using the waste block, I usually cut it out a little bit so that the glue can sit inside, it just doesn't get all squashed out, and then it's just the start of gluing everything together. With the actual base glued onto the waste block, it's just a case of rounding it off with a bowl gouge. Then facing off the surface, which will then be the area where the segmented bits start being glued on. Gluing the segments on is actually quite quick and easy. It's just a case of putting plenty of glue on each surface before you put it together. I've also found that with using the wood PVA glue, that if you just leave it held in place for probably about 5 minutes, it stops it from sliding about, and you can then release the actual pressure on it and then glue up your next segment straight away, so at least you can get literally all the segments glued on in one go. Once they've all set enough, it's just a case of clamping them up in an ordinary wood clamp, and then that way you can just leave them overnight and get back onto the lathe to start doing the next bit. Another waste block that I've just cupped out a little bit, and this is going to be for the lid, and just a case of gluing the first segment on first with the hot glue, and then all the rest will follow with the wood PVA glue. When these are all set enough, just put them into another clamp. So following day, just take them out the wood clamp and they can actually start going onto the lathe. You'll also notice here I always put a mark on all of my work wherever it goes into jaw one, at least that way there's more chance of it lining up and being central every time. So the initial thing is to just round the whole thing off. Still totally unclear at this point of what shape I want to do. You'll also see I've got a waste piece of wood just sat on the tailstock there, just to give it a little bit of support. So I've decided now on what shape I want to do, so it's just going to come naturally from the very bottom thin piece right out to the top edge, and then round off the top corners, and there will be a lid, a smaller lid, sat inside. With the majority of the actual base done now for shape-wise on the outside, it's a case of getting the lid done. This is really because I don't know what size the lid is going to be in the end, and I really need that there so that I know what is the maximum size hole I can actually put in the base. This time I'm using the spindle gouge, which is what I use for most of the outside process. Once all the outside is mainly shaped, it's a case of using a straight square scraper, which will then create the tenon which drops into the base. On to one of my favourite processes with the spindle gouge again, just back hollowing in the lid. Once all the lid is actually finished off, it's just a case of just cleaning up a little bit. I put a bit of sanding sealer in there. Once the sanding sealer is dried, suppose I'm using my version of the OJ Shine Juice, which I basically use a mixture of shellac, and I use a very minimal amount of tung oil. All I really want the oil to do is lubricate it, so at least you can run it at high speed. All the lid is just about finished here, and it's just a case of parting it off from really the waste block lid is made, I know what size hole what I'm going to need to have in the actual base. If you look very, very carefully just outside the size of the hole I've currently got, you'll see the line there, which is more or less about the size I want to finish up with. Now, I don't actually video much of this hollowing, purely and simply because it's pretty boring just seeing somebody hollowing out something like this inside. So I did the first few minutes here, working from the top, just to try and to thin it out, get it to round, and the hardest bit was actually getting from underneath the lip, then slowly working down. But the problem is that I found is that you end up probably taking a little bit out too much in one place, so then you try and smooth the whole lot out again, and before you really know it, you've got quite thin. And the problem I had here was that then I had a pretty aggressive cut at one point, and the whole lot just flew off the lathe.
Hello there, it's Paul here, and welcome along everyone. As you probably see from the title, a failed segmented box, and I've got to say I'm pretty annoyed at the moment with it. If it was just an ordinary box broken or something like that, I probably wouldn't mind so much, but it's the 3 or 4 days preparation, getting it to the point of where you can put it on the lathe and turn it. That to me is the main issue. So what happened was I was hollowing this centre bit out, and basically I just think that the tool dug in and just knocked the whole thing apart. Rather a bit annoyed because this top inner bit here I'd got down to the thickness that I wanted, and it was hard work. And the trouble is, I think every time I was working on that top bit I got some ridges and everything like that, so it was a case then levelling it out again as you went along. I just needed to pull some of the wood away from this top piece up here so that I could actually get under the lip properly. And it's really strange actually. I've got the crown hollowing tool. I'm not entirely happy with it at the minute. I've got another project that I don't know whether I'll ever get to finish. It took me about an hour, 2 hours to hollow something else out, and it really did take a lot of work. And I think on the other one I did, I thought it might have been down to because I was using teak and it's a little bit oily, and I didn't know whether that was cutting properly. But the strange thing was that this would cut the Sapele part of this quite nicely, but it really struggled with the oak. So again, it could just be me, but I was really struggling with it. Now, unfortunately, I haven't filmed it all. I had filmed up to the point of where I started hollowing, but then because you couldn't really see anything, all you could just see was the hollowing tool in the end here, nothing else really happening, I just stopped videoing. So unfortunately I don't actually have the bit where it flew off the lathe in pieces. So basically what I'd done here, I thought this bottom bit here was a bit of oak, but I think it's actually ash. Could be totally wrong, but it's just by the looks of the grain, it's certainly not oak. So I've got a smaller Sapele segment oak, they were both the same sizes, and then a larger piece of Sapele and oak on the top there as well. And they were all 12 sections. It was just a case that I'd used my new table saw to cut all the segments, and most of them had come out fine. Just an odd little issue with 1 or 2, which was just a case of sanding them up and just re-gluing them. I was actually quite pleased with the way the segments had come out, but it wasn't to be. But I suppose I do have a half-finished lid. Again, that had got a small piece of, I think it's ash on the bottom there, and I've done a narrow section of Sapele and a larger section of oak, so that was probably going to be about the height of the lid. And I was just a case of, once I've got the base done, I was going to jam chuck this in there and then just curve over the top, and then maybe had a little knob or something on the top to lift it off with. So I'm sure that will come in handy at some point for something else, or just left in the workshop as a reminder with the other sections. I think it's really important that we show our fails as well as obviously all the successes, because it doesn't go right all the time. And obviously when you're videoing things and producing the video, you can cut out little pieces and stuff like that, so it shows that work is going a lot smoother than it actually is. But like I say, I think it's important as well, when something totally fails, that you really do need to show up. If this is your first time here, please do subscribe and hit the little bell button. You'll get notified every time I upload a video. So for my existing subscribers, again, as always, a big thank you for coming back and supporting me. It's so much appreciated. And I'd appreciate if everybody hit the share button, hit the like button, and please do leave the comments below, especially if it's about the hollowing side. I am so interested and want to try and improve on that side. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you on the next project video. Bye.